The forest was drowning. Rain slammed down in angry sheets, drenching the earth in a cold, bitter wash. Moonlight broke through the clouds in sharp, violent flashes. Here, then gone, like the world couldn't decide whether to show her path or bury her in darkness. She ran. Every step was a scream. Not out loud, no, she didn't have the breath for that. But in her bones, in her chest. Her shoulder was slick with blood, hot and sticky, soaking the shredded remains of her tunic. Her breath came in stabs, sharp, panicked, the kind of breath you take when you know you don't have many left. Behind her, the howls rose again, closer this time. Not wild beasts. Her pack, the ones who should have protected her, the ones who now hunted her like she was nothing. She stumbled, her foot snagging on a root slick with mud, and went down hard. The ground caught her with no mercy. Knee first, then hands, then her cheek slammed into the cold, wet moss. Her fingers curled into the earth as the pain in her shoulder screamed louder, threatening to pull her under. But she pushed up, because she had to, because she knew what would happen if she didn't set. She could already hear them. Paws thudding against the earth, snarls carried on the wind, voices twisting with hate. Find her. She seps ours, she doesn't set get to run. But she wasn't set theirs. Not anymore. Not after what they did. She pressed her hand to the tree beside her, smearing it with blood, and kept going. Limbs trembling, body broken, heart burning, every inch forward felt like a mile. Every breath was a knife. The forest felt alive around her, wild, angry, whispering. The wind tore at her hair, dragging it into her eyes. Branches clawed at her arms, drawing fresh blood, and still she ran. Then she saw it. There, half hidden between two crumbling boulders, a shadow that was too dark, too still. A cave, not wide or deep, but enough to hide, to breathe, to hope. She threw herself toward it, stumbling through the mouth just as lightning cracked the sky behind her. The flash lit the forest for a single second, and she saw them, dozens moving as one. Her breath caught. She dropped to the cave floor, pressing her back to the cold stone, hand over her mouth. Silent, still, terrified. Her heart was too loud. It pounded like it wanted to betray her, to call out to them. She sips, here. She sips, bleeding. She sips, afraid. She bit down on a sob. Then his name slipped out. So soft, so broken. Ronan. Not her mate. Not the one the moon chose for her, but the Alpha King of the rival lands. The enemy. The threat. The one she sworn to kill once. And yet, the only name her heart still remembered. The only name that felt like safety. She tried to shift. Her wolf clawed at the edge of her mind, furious, desperate to come out, to defend, to escape, to tear through the ones who turned on her. But the fire wouldn't let her. It exploded through her veins in sparks and tremors, silver and wild. It wasn't just her power. It was her, untamed, half-born, screaming to be seen. Her hands shook violently. Her bones cracked halfway through the change. Her skin shimmered like moonfire. And then it all collapsed. Pain hit her like a wave. Her head slammed back against the stone wall. Her breath hitched. She was too weak, too hurt, too scared. Rain trickled in from the cave entrance, pooling at her feet. Outside, the thunder rolled across the sky like the gods themselves were watching, judging, laughing. Her chest rose and fell in jerky gasps. She could smell them now. Her pack, closer, wolves in full shift, moving like shadows across the drenched forest floor. She thought of her mate, of his voice when he looked her in the eyes and said those words, words that shattered everything. "You are not mine." And the way the others laughed, the way they nodded, as if it had all been decided already, as if she'd never had a choice. Her throat burned. She remembered the crowd, the rejection ceremony, the way they stared, like she was filth, like she was less. And she remembered the fire, how it had roared out of her without warning, how her wolf had screamed and everything had turned silver. And how, after that, they turned on her, called her cursed, dangerous, unfit, a threat, a burden, a weapon they couldn't control. And so, they hunted her. Her body trembled, not just from the cold, but from the storm inside her, from the shame, from the rage, from the memory of his eyes, those golden ones, not her mate, not the one the moon gave her, but the one who stood at the border that night, sword in hand, watching her fall. The Alpha King, Ronan. He should have killed her. He didn't sit. Why? She didn't set, no. Didn't stat care. All she knew was that when the world shattered, his face was the only one that hadn't been twisted in disgust. It had been something else. Something she didn't have time to understand. A branch cracked outside the cave. Her breath stopped. Mud sloshed. Paws padded. A growl. Low, dangerous. Close. Her fingers curled into fists. She wasn't sat ready to die. Not yet. Not here. Not like this. She pushed herself up slowly, ignoring the fresh wave of agony in her ribs. Her fingers reached for the dagger strapped to her thigh, wooden handle slick with rain and blood. One step, two. The cave was pitch black now. The light swallowed whole, but she could hear them breathing. They were so close. And then, a flash. Not lightning, not fire, but something brighter, something alive. The cave walls lit up with a pale silver glow, like moonlight had decided to bloom from the stone itself. She blinked, and in that glow, she saw it. A mark. On her wrist. It hadn't been there before. It shimmered, pulsing, flickering like a heartbeat. A circle, broken down the middle, the ancient sign of the Flameborn. No, it wasn't possible. That mark hadn't been seen in generations. But it was there, on her. And in that moment, something inside her shifted. Not her bones, not her wolf. Something deeper. Something older. She heard a voice, soft and cold, whisper across her mind. "You are not the girl they cast aside. You are fire. You are fury. You are the end of their bloodline." She gritted her teeth. She wasn't ready. She wasn't strong enough. But the fire inside her, it didn't care. The ground trembled. And far, far away. So did the mountains. If you can feel her pain, her rage, her fire, you belong here. Subscribe to Crimson Werewolf Shifter Romance Collection. Because here, we tell stories that burn. Her knees buckled. One moment, the fire was surging through her like a scream with no mouth. The next, her body gave out completely. She crumpled. No grace, no final stand. Just flesh meeting stone, her bones folding like wet paper. Her cheek struck the ground, her breath stuttering out in a shiver. Rainwater pooled around her legs, her blood mixed with the dirt. And she lay there. Not because she wanted to, because she had nothing left. Her fingers twitched, clawing at the ground like maybe it could hold her together. Her lungs fought for air. The pain in her shoulder pulsed hard and fast, like a second heartbeat. Ugly, relentless. She should have heard the footsteps. She didn't set. She didn't feel the change in the air either. Not until it was already too late. Not until the temperature dipped suddenly. not until her skin crawled with that strange, ancient knowing, that instinct. Not prey, not predator. Something else entirely. The storm hushed for half a breath, like the world paused. And then she felt it. A presence. Big, still, watching. She pushed her chin up, eyes blurry, vision broken by rain, and saw the shadow standing at the mouth of the cave. Massive, unmoving, soaked to the bone, head tilted slightly to one side, like he wasn't sure what he was looking at. Or maybe, like he'd always expected to find her here. The air thickened between them. Every instinct in her screamed, run, hide, fight, bite. But her body wasn't sent listening anymore. The figure stepped forward. Boots crunched softly over stone and wet moss. His scent hit her neck's deep pine, smoke, the sharp sting of lightning. Alpha scent, heavy, old, powerful enough to command silence. And then, his eyes, gold. Not warm, not kind, just knowing, like they'd seen this moment already, 100 times, in a dream, in a warning. "You're not supposed to be here," he said. His voice was quiet, but it wasn't set, casual. It wasn't pity either. It was something stranger, like he wasn't scolding her, like he was scolding fate itself. She tried to move, to lift her weight off the ground. His hand caught her shoulder before she could collapse again. Gentle, but firm. Heat radiated off him. Real heat, not power, not flame. Flesh and blood heat. Solid, anchoring. Her body recoiled. She snarled, tried to twist, tried to bite, anything. Her wolf surged up, wild, defensive, even in its weakness. His hand closed around her wrist. Not hard, not cruel, but absolute. She froze, not because he forced her to, because something in the way he touched her said, "I could crush you, but I won't." His face was close now, shadows carved along his cheekbones, a faint scar down one brow. His jaw clenched once, then eased. "Easy," he said. "You said hurt." Her breath hitched. She didn't recognize his voice. Not really. But his scent. She'd smelled it once before. The night everything fell apart. The night her world bled silver. The border. The full moon. The standoff. He said been there. She remembered. He was the one who didn't look away when she screamed. And now, here he was. Real, close, too close. "You shouldn't," she started, voice raw, useless. "I know," he cut in. He still hadn't let go. The tension between them wasn't just emotional. It was chemical, like their very skin refused to ignore the other, like the air sparked at their proximity. He tilted his head again, studying her face. Not like she was a stranger. Like he was searching for something he seemed lost. "You said my name," he murmured. Her breath caught. He wasn't asking. She hadn't realized he had heard, or that she had spoken it aloud. Her name, her voice, his presence, it all tangled together in a knot that made no sense. She tried again to pull away. He let her, this time. Her knees folded, and she collapsed back against the wall. He didn't move to help her again. He just stood there, silent, until she finally asked. "I could ask you the same," he said, then quietly. "But we both know why." She shook her head. "I don't set. You do." She hated the way he said that. Soft. Certain. She didn't even know herself anymore. But somehow he did. She bristled. Her fingers clenched in the dirt. He crouched then, not rushed, not dominant, just level. Eye to eye, gold met silver. And for a moment, The storm outside might as well have vanished. "You sit your bleeding," he said. "I'm even worse." "Not recently." She gave a bitter laugh. "What do you want from me?" He didn't answer right away. His gaze drifted to her shoulder, to the blood, to the jagged mark of a claw, to the place her wolf had tried and failed to heal, and then his eyes snapped back to hers. "I want to know what they did to you," he said. Her mouth dried because she couldn't speak it aloud. Not yet. And he must sip known, because his next words were softer. "Come with me." She recoiled again. "Why would I ever?" "I'm not offering safety," he said. "Just time." That gave her pause. Not help, not salvation. Time. Time to breathe, to not be hunted, to not bleed, to figure out what the hell was happening to her body, her wolf, her flame. Time to remember who she was before the world started using her like a weapon. He stood, turned, paused at the mouth of the cave, and didn't look back. She hated the part of her that wanted to follow, but her body had already decided. Her legs moved, slow, dragging, and still, he didn't look at her. Not until they were outside the cave, and the rain hit her again like punishment. He reached back once, his hand found her waist, held her steady, and then he picked her up, just lifted her like she weighed nothing, like she wasn't dripping blood and regret and fear, like she was something worth carrying. She could fought, but she didn't because for the first time in what felt like forever, the thing touching her didn't want to harm her, or cage her, or fix her. He just held her. He carried her through the storm, one step at a time, into enemy land, past the border stones, past ancient wards that should have lit up at her presence, but stayed dim. She felt them pass through, felt something click inside her chest, felt the last threads of the life she'd known tear, and she thought, this should feel like treason. But it didn't. It felt like a beginning, or the start of something she wasn't ready for. They didn't speak again, not even when wolves howled in the distance, her old pack still searching, not even when they passed the first outpost of his territory, and the guards gawked, confused, fearful. They just walked. And as the forest turned to stone and the cliffs gave way to the ancient path that led to the rival Alpha Sep's stronghold, she looked up at him, at the man carrying her. His eyes caught hers, and for a second, just 1 second, she forgot she'd ever been unwanted. She didn't speak as they passed beneath the blackened archway, stones slick with old moss and war blood history. His stronghold loomed ahead. Not a castle, not quite a fortress, but something ancient, built into the cliffside, its bones of obsidian and ash-colored stone rising like teeth from the mountain itself. Fires flickered along its outer walls, not warm, not welcoming, just watchful. The wind shifted. His scent was everywhere. Earth, smoke, steel. It curled into her lungs, pushed out the scent of blood, of betrayal, of him, Caius, her mate, her mistake. The weight of that name twisted inside her like a blade. She hadn't thought of him in hours. Not really. Not deeply. Not since the cave. But now, walking these cold stone halls, steps echoing into silence behind Ronan Sep's measured stride, it all came rushing back. The ceremony, the circle, the moon overhead, silver and distant, and watching, and still somehow silent when they offered her up like she was nothing but burden. She hadn't asked to be paired with Caius, but the pull was undeniable. The ache, the tether, the draw of a destined bond etched into bone. She was 17 the day it snapped into place. The first time she looked at him, and felt her chest tear open with recognition. And he looked back and saw nothing. Nothing but a name on a scroll, nothing but obligation. He never touched her, never kissed her, not once, not even on the day the bond was sealed. He stood beside her in front of the pack, tall and proud and cold, and said all the right words while never looking her in the eyes. And she smiled, because she thought maybe she could earn it. The gaze, the love, the thing others spoke of in low, reverent tones when they talked about their mates. She thought she could be patient. She thought if she just stayed quiet, stayed small, stayed controlled, he might see her. But the moon never gifted her that kind of story. The breaking point came months later, on the eve of her first shift. She'd waited, like all young wolves did, for the full moon to rise over sacred ground. They'd wrapped her in white cloth, chanted old words, painted her skin with runes of protection. She remembered the sting of the paint, the smell of the herbs, the nervous laughter of the other younglings beside her. And she remembered Caius. He stood apart, watching. He left before the moon rose. He didn't stay to see her become. She shifted, but she didn't just shift. She erupted. Her wolf came out in silver flame and chaos. She lost herself. She remembers fire, screams, claws, the sound of someone's throat tearing open. When she woke, the world smelled like ash and charred flesh. They told her she'd killed a warrior, burned him from the inside. She couldn't remember. But the horror in their eyes, she didn't need the memory. It was written all over their faces. And Caius, he wasn't there. He didn't visit. Not in the healer's tent. Not at the tribunal. He didn't say a word. Not until the rejection ceremony. It wasn't supposed to happen so publicly, but the pack demanded it, said the moon had made a mistake, said they needed to see him unbound from her, needed the bond severed. They gathered in the arena, ringed in fire and salt, with the elders standing high above. She stood barefoot in the center, stripped of her name, her title, her dignity, and he stepped forward, eyes blank, voice flat. I, Alpha Caius of the Blood Pine Pack, reject this bond, just that. No tremble, no sorrow, just disgust barely hidden behind ritual. Then came the whispers. No one wants a cursed flameborn. Her wolf isn't natural. She said's too dangerous. She remembers the cold, the kind that didn't come from wind, the kind that seeped in from inside, the kind that made her wonder if maybe they were right. She didn't scream, didn't cry. She stood there while her soul cracked like ice. And when the last vow was undone, and she was unmade, she ran. It was her aunt who found her weeks later in the wild, half-shifted, fevered, a rogue, cast out by her mate, exiled by her pack. Her aunt healed what she could. Bathed her, clothed her, gave her stories, old ones, forgotten ones about flame-born wolves and forbidden shifts. She told her truths no elder ever had the courage to speak. You said not broken, she said. You said rare, and the rare are always feared. But she also said something else, something that cut deeper than even Cadius's rejection. Never trust a mate. They turn on you the second your light threatens their shadow. And now here she was, in the heart of her so-called enemy Sep's lair, being carried, protected, seen by the Alpha King of the rival lands. She lay on the bed they'd placed her in, soft furs, deep cushions, warmth that clung to her skin like a foreign language. She should have been tense, ready to bolt, claws at the ready. But she wasn't set. She felt safer than she had in years. That terrified her more than anything. The door hadn't closed all the way. She could hear him just outside. Ronan speaking low to someone. A guard. Maybe a healer. She couldn't make out the words, but she felt the weight of his presence through the wall. And that was the problem. It felt, everything with him felt. Not like Kedge's, who numbed her, not like her aunt's warnings, which stiffened her spine. Ronan made her feel like maybe she wasn't ruined. Maybe there was a version of her that hadn't been burned to ash. She hated that thought. She'd built a fortress around her pain, around the fire, around the wreckage of what they made her believe she was. She didn't want to feel anything for anyone again. But something in his eyes, when he looked at her, it wasn't pity, it wasn't fear, it was recognition. And that terrified her most of all, because if he saw her, truly saw her, he could destroy her in ways no enemy ever could. She turned her face to the fire beside the bed, watched the flames dance. Silver flickered in the center of the orange. Her flame, still alive, still hers. But for how long? And at what cost? It began with silence. Not the kind that fills a room when words are finished. The kind that breathes. The kind that waits. She felt it before she saw it. The shift in the air, the way the trees pulled closer together as if guarding something sacred, something too old to name. Their leaves didn't rustle, didn't move with the wind. They stood absolutely still, like sentries, like witnesses. Ronan walked ahead of her, wordless. His posture had changed since they left the stronghold, less alpha, more solemn, more priest than king, as if even he didn't belong here, not truly, as if this place existed outside the laws of power. She followed because something in her bones said she had to, not out of trust, out of inevitability. They climbed narrow paths carved through the cliff face, winding like veins into the heart of the mountain forest. The further they went, the colder it became, not the bite of winter, but the kind of chill that came from ancient things being disturbed. No birds, no insects, only the soft crunch of moss underfoot and her breath in her throat. Then, the trees opened, not gradually, all at once, like a curtain drawn back to reveal a stage untouched by time, a wide circle of flat stone, etched deep with runes. Each mark pulsed faintly under the moonlight, just enough to see them glow as if they remembered her. She froze. It knew her. This place. She didn't know how or why, but her body did. Her breath caught, and the moment she stepped past the last root of the forest into the circle, something shifted. The fire inside her stirred. It didn't rage. It didn't burn. It listened. Ronan said nothing. He stopped at the edge, hands loose at his sides, eyes fixed ahead. And then she appeared. The seer. She stepped from the shadows between the stones like she'd been waiting in the folds of the earth itself. Old, impossibly old, not in years but in presence. Her eyes were milk white, blind, but her face turned directly toward the girl, not searching, knowing. Hair as silver as mist, robes of pale gray that shimmered with something too soft to be fabric. She walked slowly, every step a prayer, and she began to hum. Low, gravel, and air, the kind of hum that made the hairs on your arms rise. Then came the words, whispered like a curse, chanted like a law. The child of ash and flame will either bind the wolves or burn the throne. The air thickened, the ground shivered, and suddenly her knees gave way. Not from pain, from force. She fell. Her palms hit the runes, and they blazed. The symbols beneath her flared silver, licking across the stone like fire set to oil. They didn't burn her. They recognized her. like they'd been waiting centuries for her skin. She gasped as her mark, just below her collarbone, lit for the first time. A silver ember, circular and broken in the middle, pulsed outward in waves. It didn't sting. It didn't scorch. It anchored. The seer knelt beside her, bone-thin hands reaching with the gentleness of a ghost. Her fingers hovered above the ember. "You are the fire-born girl." The words settled into her chest, like a second heartbeat. Sealed in flesh, forgotten in blood, hidden until now. Her mouth opened. No sound came. The seer Sip's voice thickened. "You have felt it." "Yes, the dreams, the heat, the memories that are not yours." And then the vision slammed into her. She didn't set fall this time. She fractured. Scenes ripped from time poured into her like fire down her throat. Wolves at war. Flame-devouring cities built from stone and bone. A woman with silver eyes screaming in battle, her hands ablaze, her voice thunder, her rage absolute. And beside her, a man, golden-eyed, armor shattered, falling, dying, because of her. The girl screamed as the vision clawed deeper. Her hands slammed into the stone, the rune light stuttered. And then she was yanked free. Ronan's hands were on her shoulders, holding her back, grounding her. She gasped for breath, the forest spinning, the shrine pulsing like a second moon. The seer stood over her again, voice like smoke and ash. "You've seen it." She couldn't speak. "You were there, before, long before, reborn to finish what was undone." "No," she whispered. The seer leaned in. "Yes." Her body trembled. The truth lodged in her chest like a dagger turned inward. This wasn't set just about exile. This wasn't stud about Caius, or rejection, or betrayal. This was blood deep, soul deep. She wasn't hunted because she was broken. She was hunted because she was dangerous, because she carried a power sealed in legend, a fire that once broke kings. Her voice cracked. "What if I don't want it?" The seer tilted her head. "What if I can't control it?" she asked again. "Then it will control you." Silence fell like a blade. She turned her face to Ronan then, because she needed something real, something that wasn't myth or prophecy or death. His gaze was steady, no fear in it, no doubt, just her. He didn't speak, but something passed between them. A current, not magic, not fire. Recognition. He knew, he said always known, and he still brought her here, still stood beside her, still chose her. That broke her more than the prophecy. "Why?" she whispered. "He didn't flinch, because I saw what they didn't." Tears welled in her eyes, furious and unwanted. He stepped closer. "They saw chaos. I saw a reckoning." She shook her head. "I saw not a weapon." "No," he said. "You set her the answer." To what? She didn't know. But the truth felt heavy on her skin, real, unshakable. The seer Sip's voice drifted again. "The time is coming, child. The wolves will howl for blood, and they will look to the fire for judgment." She staggered to her feet, the mark on her collarbone still pulsing. She didn't feel powerful. She felt cracked, burned, exposed. But fate didn't ask for permission. It demanded, and it had chosen her. She looked at the seer, then at Ronan, then at the runes beneath her feet, and she whispered, "What does this mean for my heart?" The seer Sep's smile was soft, almost human. "That will be the war you fight alone." It began with whispers. That sense always how destruction begins. Not with an explosion. not with war cries, but with secrets passed between mouths like poison. By the time they returned from the shrine, the wind itself carried their names, hers and Ronan's, threaded with contempt, fear, and fury. The flame-born has returned. He sets hiding her. The gate to Ronan's stronghold hadn't even shut behind them before the first messenger arrived, pale, panting, eyes wide with disbelief. They know he choked. They sense coming. Ronan's expression didn't change, not visibly, but something inside him locked into place. The moment his hand touched the steel of the gate, the air tightened. His guards snapped to attention. Orders barked low in the ancient tongue of his bloodline. Barricades sealed, runners dispatched, scouts sent to the eastern ridge. And still, he turned to her with eyes that burned with something more than strategy. Not panic, not anger, resolve. He knew this would happen. She should have felt betrayed, but all she could feel was the thunder of her heartbeat, pounding out a single, unbearable truth. The world was coming for her, and this time it would come with teeth. It didn't take long. By nightfall, the enemy arrived. Not in one army, but in fractured fury. Packs from the northern wilds, rogue clans long allied with Cadius, even elders who'd once blessed her birth and then buried her name in shame. They came bearing torches and sharpened claws, wearing ceremony robes as armor. She watched from the cliffside tower, looking down at the sacred grounds where the seer had summoned her fate. The runes still glowed faintly beneath the mist. But tonight, they would bleed. Because this wasn't a gathering. It was an execution waiting to happen. Inside the keep, Ronan argued with his war council. She didn't hear the words, but she didn't need to. The tension vibrated through the stone. Every man and woman around him questioned his sanity. Why protect her? Why risk war for a cursed girl? She wanted to hate them. She didn't set. They were right. She was dangerous. She was fire. And the fire never asked what it would burn next. Because the bell tolled once. The gates opened. Ronan walked out first. Not as a king. As a wolf preparing to bleed for what he believed in. The enemy stood in a crescent at the edge of the stones, their backs lit by flame. Caius. She hadn't seen him since the day he cut the bond. But gods, he hadn't changed. Still tall, still cold, still beautiful in the way weapons are, polished and hollow. His eyes met hers across the distance. And she felt it again. That pull. Faded now, faint, but not gone. Like a scar still learning how to forget the blade. He took a step forward. I want what's mine. His voice curled through the wind like a blade against skin. Ronan said nothing. Caius lifted a hand, gesturing toward her with all the disdain of someone selecting a piece of livestock. She belongs to me. The bond may be broken, but the law remains. She was branded under my command. Branded. She flinched. The silence that followed wasn't peace. It was anticipation. Caius turned to the crowd. You all know what she is. What she did. She is a weapon, one elder growled. She is the fire that will scorch the packs, said another. She is not pack. She is curse. She wanted to scream, but Ronan stepped forward instead. She is wolf. The words rang across the stone louder than any roar. She is power, she is prophecy, and she is under my protection now. Gasps, growls, swords drawn. Caius danced, jaw tensed. You would break the old laws for her. I would break the sky if it tried to chain her again. And that was the match. The moment the world caught fire. Caius lunged, first, not for Ronan, but for her. Straight through the crowd, claws extended, face twisted with rage. She didn't sit to wait for permission. She moved, down the steps, over the stone toward him, not as prey, as flame. The air shifted around her. Her silver mark blazed to life. Her bones screamed with heat. Her wolf tearing forward, not out of panic, but defense. And then they collided. Caches reached her first. She felt his claws sink into her side, tearing fabric, drawing blood. But she didn't cry out. She grabbed his throat. Flame roared from her fingertips, licking up his jaw, searing the skin without mercy. He roared, stumbled back. "You would burn me?" She looked him in the eyes. "I would end you." And then the chaos swallowed them whole. The battlefield exploded, wolves shifting midair, steel flashing, spells igniting in the mouths of old druids. The shrine cracked beneath their feet, the runes flared and shattered, and somewhere in the storm of bodies and howls and fire, she lost him. Ronan. She couldn't see him, couldn't feel him, just claws and smoke and the sound of her own heartbeat. Trying to outpace the war around her, she turned once, twice. A blade sliced across her shoulder. She fell to her knees. Blood pooled under her hands. She was going to die, not because she was weak. And then, his voice. Move. A blur. Teeth. Him. Ronan slammed into the attacker. Claws ripping through the air. He was fury made flesh. Fast, brutal, unstoppable. He reached her, grabbed her. "Come on. I can set." "You can." She stumbled. He caught her. The world collapsed behind them. She heard the seer Sip's voice again in her mind. "You were reborn to finish what was undone. But what if finishing it meant watching everything burn?" They broke from the field, ran, through the woods, through blood and breath, and the sound of the world screaming her name like a curse. They made it to the border, to the edge of everything. She turned to him, breathing ragged. "I can do this." He looked at her. Truly looked. "You already are?" She shook her head. "They never stop." "I know. They call me traitor." His jaw clenched. "They call me worse." Her voice cracked. "But I want to be their weapon." And then she turned, walked into the darkness. Alone. Because if she stayed, she'd be used. If she stayed, she said be chained to prophecy. To him. And God's help her. She didn't want to burn for fate. She wanted to burn for herself. The old war camp had been forgotten by most. Tucked between two crag-backed ridgelines, it wore a shroud of mist that never lifted, even beneath the moonlight. The broken remnants of stone walls curled like fingers around the clearing, moss blooming in every crack. A rusted banner, once the crest of a king, hung limp from a splintered pole. But tonight, it felt like sanctuary. She sat beneath the dying branches of a crooked pine, arms around her knees, cloak damp with river water and ash. He didn't stop to speak when he joined her. He just sat. Not too close. Not too far. The kind of closeness that asked for nothing but offered everything. She watched the moonlight scatter through the branches. It didn't glint. It didn't shine. It settled. Like it belonged here too. Her voice broke the silence first. "Do you ever wonder if the world would have been better off if you stayed silent?" He looked at her. Not startled. Just waiting. She traced a finger along her boot. Voice low. "If I had never shifted. If I had never let the fire out. If I had just let them bury me in that pack. And pretend I was nothing." He exhaled. Not laughter. A release. And then he said the words like a secret he'd hidden from even himself. My wolf has since spoken in 5 years. She blinked, turned. He was watching the fire now, not her. The flame licked soft shadows across his cheekbones. Since the night my brother died, he continued, we were ambushed. Rival packs from the coastlands. He took the hit, meant for me, died with his body between mine and the blade. He flexed his hands once. They trembled. I killed them all, every last one. But my wolf vanished, silent, not gone, just watching, like it didn't trust me anymore. The fire cracked. Neither of them moved. She understood in a way only someone broken could. What was he like? She asked. His mouth twitched, a shadow of a smile. Younger, louder, braver. She tilted her head. You said brave. He finally looked at her. Not like he was. He loved recklessly, forgave quickly. Led with his heart. He paused. I lead with scars. She swallowed. I know what that feels like. Her eyes fell to her lap. Her fingers tightened around the cloak. My first shift. It wasn't supposed to happen that way. I was prepared. Rituals. Chants. The whole pack watching. And then, her voice trembled. She didn't stop. I burned him. The warrior. His name was Kieran. I remember his face. Not even fear. Just shock. She closed her eyes. I remember the smell of his skin blistering. And I remember thinking, this is who I am. This is who I smell always be. Ronan didn't speak. She turned her head slightly, expecting distance. But his hand was there. Open. Palm up. No demand, no pull. Just presence. She didn't take it. But she didn't look away either. A soft wind curled around them. And then, like breath under breath, she felt it. A stirring. Low, deep in her bones. Her wolf, not roaring, not clawing, just watching, stretching inside her like a limb long asleep. Across from her, Ronan Sepp's breath caught. His eyes narrowed. Did you feel that? He whispered. She nodded. And then, light. Not bright. Not blinding. Just there. A silver shimmer rose from her skin, threads of moonlight twisting off her shoulders, wrapping her in the faint echo of fur. And from him, gold, pulsing, like the heart of a dying sun. Not fire, not magic. Soul. His wolf, silent for 5 years, stirred, and for a moment, their wolves met. Not bodies, not mouths, not even words. Just essence. Her fire, his silence. Not fighting. Just seeing each other. The connection tightened, a string between ribs. She shifted forward an inch. So did he. And then their foreheads touched. Barely. Heat radiated where their skin brushed. A breath passed between their lips, the kind that could end a war. And then, she pulled back. I can she whispered. His brows drew together. In ache. I can lose myself again. He nodded once. His eyes never left hers. You don't have to be whole, he said. You just have to be real with me. She exhaled. And for the first time since she was cast out, she didn't feel like fire. She felt like flesh. Wounded, wary, wanting. The silence between them wasn't empty. It was sacred. The kind that cradles broken things gently, without forcing them to heal. She looked at his hand again. Still open. Still waiting. And maybe, just maybe, not everything sacred has to be burned. It started with a lie. One whispered in the right ear, at the wrong time, by the wrong mouth. The spy had been among them for weeks. Quiet, loyal, watching, listening. A soldier with no name, no scent strong enough to remember. He knelt before the king's council with a grin that didn't reach his eyes and a voice sharp enough to split bone. "She is not just flame-born," he said. "She is descended from the phoenix line." The room fell to a silence so brutal, it felt like the world had stopped breathing. Not myth, bloodline, words spoken in prophecy, but never meant to be real. The seer had hinted. The runes had flickered, but no one had dared name it. Until now, whispers erupted. The king's generals recoiled, like she'd just burst into flames in front of them. One of them spit on the floor. "She sits not a wolf. She sits a creature." Within the hour, they came. The high alpha elders, cloaked in white and red, ritual garments sewn with threads soaked in the blood of the first kings. They did not run. They glided, like smoke made solid. Their presence filled the air like a weight no one could lift. They didn't knock. They didn't speak. They summoned, and she was forced to stand before them, barefoot, bruised, blood-dried on her skin, her silver mark pulsing like a warning. None of them would heed. Ronan stood at her side. For now, his jaw was tight, his eyes unreadable. But she felt it. The hesitation, the quiet war between heart and throne, between law and love. The oldest battle, the one always lost. An elder stepped forward. "This council convenes to determine whether the flame-born harbors power too volatile to live among the packs. Not who she was, what she was." Caius arrived on a storm of cold wind and colder words. He didn't look at her. He addressed the council directly, as if she were a stain on the rug. "She burned my brother alive," he said. No one corrected him. No one asked if he meant to say accidentally, or defensively, or as a child who didn't know what she was yet. Just, "She burned him." The words took root, the seeds of execution, and then the elder turned to Ronan. His voice was not cruel. That made it worse. "Do you stand with her, or with the law?" Silence. Ronan Sip's hands curled at his sides. She waited for the heat, the defiance, the fire she knew lived in his veins. But he looked down and said nothing. The elder stepped closer. "You must choose, the girl, or the crown." Still, nothing. Her throat closed, and then he whispered it, low, like he was ashamed of the sound. "You were never mine to save." The world stopped. Her heartbeat shattered in her chest, like glass underfoot. He didn't look at her. He didn't have to. The damage was done. The betrayal wasn't in the words. It was in the space where love should have been, and wasn't. Her breath came fast. Too fast. The walls of the sacred circle blurred. The elders closed in. She took a step back. Another. Her skin burned. Her fingertips glowed. The silver mark on her collarbone pulsed. Faster, brighter, louder. She whispered to herself. Not again. But it was already too late. The fire was awake. And this time, it wasn't as asking permission. Her scream tore from her throat, like a beast unleashed. The ground split open beneath her. The stone altar of judgment cracked in two, sending a web of flame shooting through the sacred floor. The elders scrambled back, robes catching fire at the hem. The air warped. Flames rose, not red, silver, a color the world was never meant to survive. Her arms lifted. Not by will, by instinct, by fury, by truth. And the sacred circle, blessed by 1,000 generations of alpha blood incinerated, ash rained down. The council was gone. The world was silent again. And still, he didn't move. Ronan stood just outside the ring of ruin, untouched, unburned, unchanged. She looked at him through the smoke, eyes shining with betrayal. And he looked away. So she turned, didn't set run, didn't stumble. She walked. Flames curled in her wake, tracing her path like a signature the earth would never forget. Behind her, the pack collapsed into chaos. She didn't set care. Let them name her monster. Let them call her flame. Let them fear her. Because for the first time in her life, they should. It was supposed to be a binding, a ritual woven from blood and history, an ancient oath whispered across time and sealed by the bones of kings, designed to unite the fractured wolf packs under one banner, one alpha, one throne, one sacrifice. Her. They didn't speak her name aloud anymore. Not in public, not in prayer. It was buried beneath titles meant to erase her. The flame-born, the curse, the girl who scorched sacred ground. But their silence didn't save them, because silence cannot stop a reckoning. And tonight, the earth would remember her name. The sacred arena had not seen war in 5 generations. Carved into the mountain itself, it stretched wide beneath a sky painted with unnatural clouds, swirling ash and fractured moonlight. Every pack was here. Every bloodline. Waiting, watching. They had gathered for unity. But what they sat built was a pyre. At the center of the stone ring stood the one who had orchestrated it all. Not Khalsis. Not the elders. Not Ronan. But him, the Shadow Alpha. He had no scent, no heartbeat, no soul. Only eyes like hollow stars and a voice that slithered across skin like frostbite. The original betrayer, the one who had sealed the flame centuries ago, using love as a leash and sacrifice as salvation. He stepped forward now, hands raised, as if offering peace. The lies. The fire must be contained, he said. His voice echoed across the arena. All except one. She stepped through the outer stone gate, silver dust swirling behind every step. She did not run. She arrived. Her hair shimmered like polished steel in the moonlight, loose and wild around her shoulders. The air bent around her, heat curling in invisible waves from her skin. She wore no armor. No crest, no crown, just scars and power. So much power the stones beneath her feet sizzled with each footfall. The crowd parted, not out of respect, out of fear. And still, she kept walking, straight to the center, straight to the trap they'd laid with her name written beneath it. The Shadow Alpha smiled. "You should have come willingly," he said. She said nothing. "You understand your role then. Your death will seal the oath. The packs will be united. Peace will reign." Still, she said nothing. Until the runes began to glow. Until the ritual circle began to rise from the stone. Until the crowd began to chant. And then, she lifted her head. And her wolf answered. A roar, unlike anything the mountain had ever heard, tore through the arena as silver flame exploded outward in a spiral, her body arched, bones stretching, cracking, reshaping, not with pain, with truth. Her shift wasn't stamp violent. It was divine. She rose, silver and massive, her eyes molten with light. Every inch of her shimmered like living steel, veins laced with wildfire, fur rippling like liquid moonlight. Her wolf was not just a beast. It was a declaration. And when she spoke, the voice was hers and not hers. Echoed from blood and bone and every woman who had ever been called too much. No one owns my fire. The ritual faltered. The Shadow Alpha Sep's smile fractured. He raised his hand to strike. But she moved first. Flame streaked from her body, not in chaos, but with purpose. It found the runes. It burned the lies. It shattered the spell woven to bind her soul. And then the ground screamed. Stone cracked. Trees at the edges of the arena ignited in silence. The mountain itself trembled, not with rage, with release. The curse was breaking, and the one who placed it was unraveling. The shadow alpha lunged. Black tendrils coiled from his hands, seeking to suffocate, to silence, to swallow the fire that refused to kneel. She met him head on. Claw to claw, flame to shadow. They collided in a cyclone of ruin, fire clashing against void. Every impact shook the earth, ripped the sky, scattered stars like dying embers. She was losing. He was older, colder, hollow, and merciless. And then he returned. Ronan, through the smoke, through the broken circle, through the horror that had once been law. He didn't hesitate this time. Didn't ask if he was allowed to stand with her. He just did. He shifted, mid-leap, his wolf golden and massive, eyes ablaze with regret and redemption. He slammed into the shadow alpha with the weight of generations behind him. She didn't look at him, but she felt him, at her side. Finally, together, they turned the tide. His strength, her fire, his teeth in shadow, her flame through smoke. Not two halves, two weapons, one purpose. The arena collapsed. The shadow alpha screamed. No, shattered into smoke and ash, undone not by death, but by defiance. And in the silence that followed, the packs watched her rise, her wolf blazing, her eyes steady, and the mountain whispered her name. Not flameborn, not cursed, but Alpha. Not because she claimed it, because she earned it. The battlefield was still, not quiet, still, like the earth itself was holding its breath. Ash drifted down from the fractured sky, silent and slow, settling over everything, stones, bodies, blood, bone, as if the world had caught fire and now mourned what it had lost, or what it had become. She stood at the center of it all, not as a victor, not as a queen, but as a woman who had burned everything they gave her, and still wasn't sure what, if anything, could rise from the ruin. Her hands were open at her sides, fingers shaking, not from weakness, but from emptiness. There was no glory in this, only silence, only consequence. The wind pressed through the shattered circle, carrying the scent of scorched roots and damp earth. Somewhere in the distance, a wolf howled, a long, aching sound that didn't speak of celebration. It sounded like grief. Or maybe it was memory. Ronan stood behind her. Close, but not touching. Not this time. He didn't speak, and that was the worst part. Because once, she longed for his silence. Now, it felt like a wound she didn't have the strength to name. She didn't turn to him. Didn't reach. She just whispered, soft, almost lost beneath the weight of all they set broken. Would you have feared me too? The words echoed off the stone, off the still burning bones of prophecy, off the remains of men who tried to chain her soul with ceremony. He didn't answer, and that hurt more than if he said yes, because fear at least was honest. Silence was a mask. She closed her eyes. The flames inside her, once raging, once wild, had quieted now, not gone, not tamed, but settled. She didn't need to scream anymore. She didn't need to beg. She was flame, and flame didn't ask permission to exist. Her voice came again, this time steadier, stronger, like smoke curling from a fire that refused to die. Maybe love was never the cure. A pause, a breath. Maybe I was the fire all along. And there it was, the truth. Not the one written in ancient scrolls or hidden in dusty tombs. not the one whispered by seers or sung by wolves in moonlit packs. Her truth, the only one that ever mattered. She looked up, finally. The moon was still there, full, pale, unblinking, watching. The stars scattered behind it like 1,000 questions. She didn't have answers. But maybe that was the point. Maybe fire wasn't meant to follow prophecy. Maybe it was meant to burn through it. And you, yes, you, are standing at the edge of her story now. So I said I'll ask you the question she couldn't set. Would you have loved her or feared her? Would you have stood beside her or turned your back? When her power rose like a tide she couldn't hold back, would you have anchored her or drowned? Would you choose her side? Because this isn't just a story. It sets a flame. And maybe, just maybe, something inside you has begun to burn too. If it has, if your heart sits still pounding, if your breath caught at her name, if you felt her fire like it lived inside your chest, then this is where you belong. Subscribe to Crimson Werewolf Shifter Romance Collection. Because here, we tell tales that burn. The mountain grew quiet in the days that followed. Not the silence of surrender, not the hush of death, a different silence. The kind that comes after something ancient wakes and isn't sure whether to stretch or devour. The battle was over. The arena was ash. The wolves had scattered, some to their dens, some into exile, some without form or name left to carry. And she had disappeared with the wind. They whispered of her like a myth already slipping into shadow. Some said she'd gone north to the glass caverns where the moonlight never dies. Others claimed she'd become fire itself, no longer flesh, no longer bound. But none had seen her. Not until the quake. It was a subtle tremor at first, barely enough to stir the tea in a healer sip's cup. Just a flicker. A heartbeat, a whisper in the stone. But the land remembers things the mind tries to forget. And by nightfall, the trees were splitting at their roots. The sky had turned the color of old bruises, and the moon no longer sat still. In a small camp nestled in the crook of 2 rivers, an elder sat sharpening bone into blade. He'd fought in the shadow wars, lost a brother to silver rot, buried his alpha in frozen mud. He was indeed afraid of much. But when the messenger arrived, pale and wild-eyed, panting like a wolf mid-shift, he stopped breathing. The boy fell to his knees. Mud streaked his cloak, blood behind his ear, voice barely more than gravel. Another one, he rasped. The elder leaned forward. Heart, like thunder in his throat. Another what? The boy looked up, and his voice, broken though it was, delivered the tremble the world had been waiting for. Another flame born. Across the mountains, across the rivers and fractured loyalties, a gathering began. The old tribes, the ones who had sworn off the crown, who had carved their bloodlines into stone to stay hidden, were moving again. Someone had felt the fire. Someone was responding to it. But it was Setter. Not this time. Far to the east, beyond the reach of the old borders, in a forgotten ruin carved with faded glyphs and dust thick with prophecy, she stood alone, but not in isolation. Not anymore. The air around her hummed with something older than magic. Not power. Recognition. A mirror of her own storm pulsed in the air, and before her, a circle of embers that refused to die. The fire she'd thought only she could bear had found its echo, and she understood something she never let herself believe. She was not the only one. Her fingers curled into the dirt, not clenched in pain, but anchored, rooted. The world wasn't ending. It was shifting, and she was no longer standing at its center as the accused. She was becoming its guide, its warning, its fire starter. Somewhere behind her, footsteps broke the silence. Steady, familiar. He didn't speak. Not yet. He didn't need to. Because this time, he wasn't here to decide if she was worth standing beside. He already had. Her eyes glowed as she turned to him. Brighter than before, but steadier. No longer wild. No longer alone. "Is a sun do coming?" she said. He nodded once, slowly. Then, "Let them." She didn't smile, but the heat that rippled off her skin said everything. This wasn't set piece. This was the breath before the blaze. And this story was far from over.